Hi, I'm Tui Snider, and here we are at Oakwood Cemetery. Wow, I am so excited to see this particular statue. If you spent any time at all in historic cemeteries, you're going to see many variations of this very same statue. We have this angelic woman dropping flowers as blessings at the gravesite. The story behind this image here goes back to St. Dorothy. St. Dorothy was a nun, and as she was being persecuted and martyred and led to her execution, there was a scribe named Theophilus who saw her passing by, and he gave her a hard time. He jeered at her, and he said, "Hey, bride of Christ, when you get to your bridegroom's garden, why don't you send me some fruit?" Just really disrespectful. Well, she was executed. And shortly after her death, Theophilus, the jeering scribe, had an angel appear to him, and she showed up with a basket of fruit and flowers. And so when you see this particular, or a variation of this particular angelic woman dropping blossoms at a gravesite, it is a reminder that your loved ones are safe in heaven. And I just have to add that one reason I was so excited to see this particular version of the St. Dorothy legend is that she has her hand. I've seen so many of these, 9 times out of 10, that the hand that's dropping the flower blossom is broken off. They're very fragile. It's not usually vandalism, it's the elements. These are beautiful sculptural pieces that we're seeing out here subjected to the elements, and this one's just wonderful how it is held up. Here we have a replica of a very famous angel. It's known worldwide as the Monteverde angel. It was commissioned to be created by an Italian sculptor named Giulio Monteverde in the 1880s. And so if you go to Genoa, Italy, you will see the original. The title of this angel is the Resurrection Angel. It's called that because, as you can see, she has Gabriel's horn, or the horn, to blow on Judgment Day on one side. Now the angel also has an arm up here, kind of by the neck. And that's different than when you see a hand kind of down lower on the chest. So a hand up on the neck is symbolic of martyrdom. You will see replicas of this Monteverde. If you posted a picture of this on Instagram, or you did a search for the Monteverde angel, you will see them all over the world. I've seen one other of these in Texas, and it was down in Galveston, and very beautiful as well. You can see why this replicas of this have caught on around the world, because it's a very captivating image, very well done. It's one of those angels you can just stare at and really enjoy. And it's another one of those reasons that I feel like cemeteries truly are open air museums. Here we have a beautiful angel to remind us of the virtue of faith. That cross that she is holding up is to symbolize faith. Now, on the cross, you will see the letters that, to our eyes, they look like IHS. These are actually Greek letters, iota, eta, and sigma. Those are the first 3 letters required to spell Jesus, which is Jesus in Greek. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that what looks to us like IHS is shorthand for Jesus. Sometimes the I, the H, and the S are monogrammed on top of each other, and people will email me and say, "Wow, why does Grandpa have a $sign on his headstone?" Because it really will look a lot like a $sign, but that's not what it means. I am a sucker for a good recording angel. That's what we have right here. In her right hand, sadly, the quill that she uses to write with, the feather quill, has broken off. But if you get close and you take a look, you can see part of the feather is still there. She has the book on the right where she's writing the deeds of your life, recording your life. That's why she's called a recording angel. And I do love them. I think they're beautiful. Now, she also has a star on her head. And although this sometimes frightens people because of Hollywood, I suppose, that stands for the Eastern Star, the star from the east that showed the three wise men, led them to Jesus's cradle. Here we have another beautiful angel. Earlier, we saw the angel who stood for the virtue of faith. So she was standing next to a cross, and I spoke about that. But now we have the other two virtues wrapped up in one angel here. So we have the anchor, which stands for hope. And we also have her hand here by her chest, which stands for charity. So faith, hope, and charity, those three virtues, we've seen them expressed in different ways in this cemetery today. I do want to add something interesting about the anchor and why it is a Christian symbol. It was actually an ancient secret symbol for Christians during the time of the Roman persecution. The anchor symbol doubled as a cross, and it might be scratched into some stone or in the dirt. It was a secret symbol to let someone else know you were Christian. Okay, well, here we have a very lovely monument for Dario Nanes, and it says here that he fell on the date. It tells us on the February 3rd of 1875, 25 years old. Now, as far as the symbolism goes, we have a dove on here, and it's a little hard to see whether this dove is holding a rosebud or an olive branch. You know, quite often we associate the dove with an olive branch, and when you see that, that's like shorthand for the Holy Spirit. Birds in general represent the soul's flight to heaven. So that's what we're seeing here. Dario is being taken to heaven. Here we have an open book on this headstone. And books, when they're open, they can often refer to your life story, the life that you lived. Occasionally you'll see a cloth over one page to say that that was where death took you in the midst of your life before you got to the end of the story. Behind it we have a palm frond, and a palm frond stands for resurrection. So here we have a closed book on top of a podium, and sometimes this can indicate that the deceased was a minister, and in this case they didn't even make us guess. It says Holy Bible right on it. And when you look down here, this is the wife, somebody's wife, so this isn't a minister, but that's just another example of a book on a headstone. Lambs stand for innocence and sacrifice, and they're nearly always found on the graves of young children, children who are 7 years old or younger. So it's rather unusual that we have a lamb here on the grave of someone who lived to be into their 50s. Quite unusual. Very beautiful lamb. One thing you will notice is they have their little tails, and their little tails have not been bobbed. So that's one detail to look for. They often don't hold up very well, and people mistake them for other creatures. I've had people send me emails asking why there's a camel on a grave, and my favorite just had the subject line, rat on grave. They thought it was a rat because it really had melted down in just that long tail. I could see where they saw it, but yes, this is a very common symbol. And like I said, what's so unusual about it here is that it's on the grave of an adult. Here we have a marvelously carved Celtic cross. And the Celtic cross originated in Ireland. St. Patrick came to Ireland in the year 431. And when he arrived to bring Christianity to the pagans, they were sun worshippers. So the legend goes that they incorporated the sun into the cross because the Celtic people already had a belief system around a circular cross like this. So that was a way of combining the two. And then in the 1800s, the Celtic cross became very popular again, and as a symbol of Ireland and people of Irish descent. So if I were to be researching this family plot, I would look to see if they were of Irish descent. This cross, we should mention, is the focal point of this family plot. And the family has all their graves around it. So people often, when they were coming up, creating their monument, because people in the past, we don't really do this so much in our day and age, but in the past, if you had a windfall, you were doing well, you weren't thinking, hey, I'm going to redecorate the kitchen. you'd think, hey, I'm going to order a really grand monument for my family and for generations to follow to see how great we were. So this one was obviously planned with a lot of foresight and care. Here we have a saintly figure. Wings are shorthand for heaven. In the middle, this saint is holding up what is called the key row. This is the X. It looks to us, to our American or English speaking eyes, it looks like an X and a P, but this is actually the Greek letters key and row, X and P. Those are the first two letters when you spell Christ's name in Greek. And so XP, or the key row, became a shorthand for scribes when they wanted to write Christ. Because as you can imagine, before they had word processors, they had a quill and ink, and wow, can you imagine being a scribe back in the day? In fact, thousands of years ago, just the X, the key, would be used to stand for Christ. And I just want to bring this up because you can tell your friends this. Every year at Christmas time, some people will write Xmas, and other people will get upset, and I've even people say, put the Christ back into Christmas. You shouldn't spell it X-M-A-S. Well, guess what? That X stands for Christ. That is ancient shorthand. So there is nothing secular about it. Now here at the bottom, we have a chalice being held up with these, gosh, these are beautiful, beautiful cherubs. They are in such great shape. This is a gorgeous piece of marble to have stood out here for however many years in all the weather that we get here in Texas. The chalice is shorthand for Last Supper, the goblet, Holy Communion. Here we have another indication that the people here are possibly of Irish descent because we have a shamrock engraved here. Now, there is quite a difference between a shamrock and a four-leaf clover. People often conflate the two, but they are different. As the legend goes, when St. Patrick came to Ireland, he would often pluck one of the clovers as an example of how each of the three leaves is separate, and yet they are all part of the same plant. And in that way, they represent the Holy Trinity. We're still in the family plot with that beautiful Celtic cross. And we notice that there are a couple small touching graves here for infants. And these infants, both of them have these sweet little faces that have wings. And these are called soul effigies. They are not meant to be a literal interpretation of the deceased, but merely to remind us that this child's soul has taken flight to heaven. Here we have a really beautiful example of the Rock of Ages motif. The Rock of Ages is a very popular hymn. It was composed in the 1700s. People often play it at funerals or request to hear it on their deathbed even. It has a line in the hymn that says, "To thy cross I cling." So sometimes you don't see Rock of Ages underneath it, but you will see a woman clinging to a cross on a headstone, and that's referencing the hymn Rock of Ages. So you don't have to see that phrase to know that they are referencing the "To thy cross I cling." If you were just strolling past this monument, you might mistakenly think that the people who owned this grave plot, their last name was Mizpah, but it's not. They are the Freemans. Mizpah is a Hebrew word meaning watchtower. And when you see it on a headstone, it refers to a passage in Genesis where a person is calling out to the Lord and saying, "Mizpah, will you please watch over me and my loved one while we are separated?" So it has come to stand for the strong bond between two people. So you would often see Mizpah on the grave of a husband and wife. And if one of them has passed before the other, it is a reminder to the one still here on earth that God is looking out after both of them equally, even though they have been separated. Now, in the Victorian age, and even now, but occasionally in an antique shop, you might see Mizpah jewelry. Sometimes you will see a ring that says Mizpah. Sometimes you will see a heart heart-shaped locket. One side says Ms. and the other says Pa, and that is just like, so one person would own one half of the heart and the other person would own the other. And it's just a reminder between the two of them that God is looking out for them both, and the strong bond that they have.